This episode is sponsored by SatelliteLifeCoaching.com, providers of your personal and professional coaching needs. This podcast is also sponsored by hikaonline.co.uk, creators of culturally specific education resources that engages your child to succeed. Here's your host, Rebecca Gordon.
20 years from now, you will be more disappointed by the things that you didn't do than the ones you did do. So, throw off the bowlines, sail away from the safe harbour, catch the trade winds in your sails, explore, dream, discover. What dreams have you been putting off that you'd love to make happen? I'm Rebecca Gordon, life change coach at Satellite Life Coaching and your host of the Coaching Lounge podcast. Today, I'm joined by a guest who took the words in Mark Twain's inspiring quote literally and figuratively. As I prepared for this podcast, there were so many questions that I knew I had to ask. We always hear people say that life's an adventure, and what I love about my guest is her relentless passion to embrace life and all that life has to offer. My guest has an audacious spirit that has served her well to move beyond fear. As you listen to this podcast, I guarantee that you'll be more than inspired to throw off the bowlines, sail away from the safe harbour and catch the trade wind in your sails. Before I introduce my guest, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about her to whet your appetite. Buki Hannaway has spent over a year navigating countless new environments. She embarked on a life-changing journey with a kind of plan to travel the world. When asked why, she replies, "If you lived in a mansion, would you spend your life in your bedroom?" Not only a world traveller, Buki is a poet, and her poetry oozes with an unmasked personal freedom ignited by a burning desire for self-exploration. Her unique offering of word, sound and power has seen her perform in various parts of the world. Buki, welcome to the Coaching Lounge.
Hello, thank you. What a beautiful introduction.
Okay. Now, I do need to say before we go any further that in the Coaching Line podcast today, we're actually having a virtual session. So you are across the other side of the world. I'm in the UK in Birmingham, UK, and you are in Australia. Whereabout in Australia are you, Buki?
I'm actually in Melbourne, Victoria.
Oh, wow. Okay. Now, I must say that when we were trying to synchronise this session today, we got the day wrong, didn't we?
Yes, we did.
Yeah, I thought we were just 12 hours, we were 12 hours in front of you, but actually it's a whole entire day and 12 hours in front. Yeah, but we're here and we're making this happen right now. And it's a great pleasure to be talking to you and have you as my guest in the Coaching Lounge. So just to say to the listeners today that if there is any problem with the quality, it is going to be because of the challenges we've had with getting this connection set up. So there might be some distortions along the way, but we're going to work with that and we'll get through it, won't we?
Yes, indeed.
Okay, great. So first question, what is Buki short for and what does it mean?
Okay, so in fact, Buki is not short for anything when it comes to being my name. That is the gift of my mother. That is the name she gave me. So it's not a nickname, but in its total, full meaning, Buki is derived from the Yoruba name taken from Nigeria, West African culture, meaning a crown has been added to honour.
Oh, fantastic!
So so the full name is Ade Bukola.
Oh,
but
right.
I'm just Buki.
Oh, that's lovely, that is, isn't it? And what a perfect meaning for you, isn't it?
Yeah, I think the interesting thing about the name, my mum didn't know the meaning of the name at the time of, deciding. She was watching a film. It was in the titles of the film. And she said, my child, the one I'm carrying right now, she will be Buki. And then during school, I always used to, when you doodle on your notebooks, I used to write my name Buki and put a crown on top of the B.
Oh,
And yeah, in my mid-20s, I realised through, research, conversation with people that was the meaning. So, yeah.
oh, excellent. Okay, great, great. Okay. Well, a fantastic foundation there just from your name. Okay. So, you're in Australia, but I will say that we met, I think it must have been 2015 or something like that, when
Yeah.
you lived in Birmingham in the UK. So,
hmm
what motivated you to travel, to become a world traveller?
There's two parts to that response. I would say that there was a conscious motivation and also a deeper level of subconscious motivation. That deeper level, I got a lot more insight into that during the trip. Even as we speak, I'm constantly understanding why it is that I've chosen to do what I'm doing. But initially, at that point of, making the arrangements to do what I'm doing, I think there were so many things that I would have defined as secure in my life at that point, the roof above my head, the way I earned my money, stability, all those different things were in place. And a lot of people would say, okay, well, what was the need to uproot yourself and do it? But those things slowly sort of, I would say the rug was pulled from underneath my feet. And then I was challenged because you think that comfort is secure, it will maintain and it will sustain you. And all the things you're attached to, for me, I just felt like they didn't have the value I thought they had. So why not go and create a new version of my own reality?
And that is really important to identify straight up, is that we can become so attached to possessions, to people, to things, and they actually weigh us down. But you identified actually it's about freedom, being free, and circumstances
hmm
led you to this. So
Yes.
it's been designed for you to be doing what you're doing, we could probably say. So how long have you been away
hmm
for?
As we speak, it's 18 months. So I began the journey in summer, well, UK summer, because it's actually the reverse way where I am. So
Right.
UK summer 2017. So yeah, 18 months at this point.
Wow, okay. And has the time gone quickly for you, or?
In different stages, it feels like is at a fast pace, particularly now we're going into a new year. So you reflect back and it feels as if 2018 has, it's gone by quite quickly. And other stages, you do feel, okay, it's taking a while now.
Right, okay, okay. So what we are going to do, because there are so many facets to you, Buki Hannaway, what we're going to do, I'm going to actually divide my questions into probably two or three distinct parts. So the first set of questions are going to be about your travel, your experience as a world adventurer, and everything that comes with that. Okay.
hmm
So 18 months ago, you started this journey, circumstances led you to this journey. It could be said that what worries people about travelling, especially if it's a long journey, months of journeying as you are experiencing, some people might find that stressful or don't know the first place to start to organise that sort of journey. So what was the process of organising your epic journey to the different countries?
Okay, well, quite unorthodox in the sense that I am actually a person with a background in travel, corporate travel, group travel, tour operator. That is my, career prior to now. So
Right.
I have got that background knowledge, but in actual fact, I didn't use it.
Okay.
I didn't use it. I didn't, book the trip myself. So in terms of that type of labor, I didn't do it because, of course, I spent, my 9 to 5 time doing that work. And when it came to my own trip, all I actually did was I approached an agent that I didn't have any, professional relationship with. And I went in to the agent and basically structured it there on the spot
Okay.
where I would visit.
Yeah.
So I actually have a round the world ticket, but it does have flexibility, so which is great because of the type of journey that I've been on. At times it's been necessary to make changes and amendments, and I've been able to do that. So I have a skeleton of a structure, but I've also got, that amazing flexibility.
All right. So with the round the world ticket, are you limited to how long you can stay in certain places, or is it open for you to be where you want to be for as long as the time?
It is open. The best example was Thailand was supposed to be 1 month and it ended up being 5, and it wasn't an issue in terms of the ticket. So I'm literally very fortunate to be able to go with this journey where I am called to go and remain where I'm, called to remain also.
Brilliant. Fantastic. And how many countries have you visited?
This is so bad because I have to count. I could list them. That would just probably make it a bit easier.
Yes.
So I began in Africa, and initially I did Ethiopia, Ghana, Swaziland, South Africa. Then I moved over to Asia, so that's where the Thailand part came in. Thailand. There I travelled to Malaysia, Burma, or Myanmar as it's also known. Yeah. And then from there, spent a little bit of time in Bali, been in Australia, and also during the time I've been in Australia, I actually went to the Philippines, and I'm back here now. So,
wow, isn't that amazing? That's awesome, isn't it? Yeah. And I've got a friend actually who I interviewed. Her name is Buki Hannaway. And she's a traveller, similar to yourself, and she's currently in Bali and looking at her Instagram pictures, having an amazing time over there. So what was Bali like for you?
I can definitely say it's not difficult to have an amazing time in Bali. Bali, that was the shortest stop. That was a week. That was a stop off on the way from Asia to Australia, and it was probably not enough. I'm happy to go any place I've been. I'm happy to visit again, which is, a bit difficult when the list of places to still visit is as long as mine is. But yeah, Bali, it's so easy. If the type of diet that I eat, it's very easy to access the food. Some places you travel, that can be a challenge. Bali is very easy. I was able to get further into my yoga practice being in Bali, very accessible in terms of spirituality and those types of practices. I would just like to say what happened in Bali. I actually had a conversation with Russell Simmons. I bumped into him, as you do, leaving my yoga session. And
yeah. Okay, you just bumped into Russell Simmons.
Yes.
Yeah, wow. What, was he in the yoga session as well, or?
So I was leaving my class, going down the stairs, and he was going up the same set of stairs to go to his class. Yeah,
And tell me, what happened then? Were you shocked when you thought? Did you have to take a double look, or did you approach him? What happened?
Okay, so he actually was speaking to me first. He was saying, the smile that you have is a beaming smile. So I think my energy was probably just stunned. It was Russell Simmons, and he introduced himself as if I didn't know who he was, which was, quite strange, I suppose. But yeah, we actually was able to have a reasoning. I asked him a particular question because I don't probably believe I've spoken to somebody with as much financial wealth as what he's been able to accumulate. So I presented a question to him. He gave me his time, and we had an exchange about that reasoning and processing that I was doing at that time. So it was a fruitful conversation. Yeah.
And just imagine, this is what they say about the synchronicities of life. At that very moment, going up and down the stairs, you both connected. That was definitely meant to be, wasn't it? So
yes.
What you gathered, you don't have to share what you gathered in that conversation. But in terms of maybe percentages, how much has that connection inspired you or supported you as you've moved on in your life?
That particular conversation, it's one of those ones where you have a bit of knowledge internally within yourself. You've sort of accessed that, but that meeting there, that collision of two people, it just solidified it. And I would say the books that I've gone on to read by choice. I've sought out certain books, were inspired by that conversation, for sure. Yeah.
Wow, that's brilliant. That's so spine tingling. Brilliant. Okay. So, I mean, I'm sort of like looking at my next question, but I'm still stuck at this point, meeting Russell Simmons. Yeah. Because I'm just intrigued. They say that things don't just happen, sometimes they happen because they're meant to happen. In terms of the exchanges of energies, because I'm getting the impression that along your journey, wherever you've been, you've actually attracted certain energies that have been supportive and catapulted you along the way. That's the sort of feeling.
100%.
Yeah. So just tell me another experience that you've had where you've had a connection and that sort of like helped to push you forward.
So it has been a variety of, people that are not Russell Simmons.
Right. Yeah.
People that I think very recently what I've been thinking about is how much people create a place, and physical environments, of course, have an influence on your energy. But the most important thing that I would say when it comes to a space is the connections and the energies that you are interacting with, attracting, and having that opportunity to be open to those energies is definitely, especially with what I do in terms of my work, which we can maybe go into later, but every single connection notable, it has been something that I've had, I could say so much. So in terms of the creative scene, the work that I wasn't even sure I was ready to do with that, I've just been catapulted into certain projects, and it really has been amazing.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you are right. We will explore those in a bit more depth in some of the questions I've got for you. One of the things I've been doing in my research is just looking at your some of your Instagram postings. And in October, you posted, I've been travelling the world for over 15 months at that time. I've been away from all I've ever known. I've been without home comforts and had no real place to call mine. All of this, combined in a beautiful, at times challenging way, has allowed me to find myself in this world. I have become home in myself. So being away for 18 months, having left your family, your friends, your job, that's one hell of a sacrifice. So my next question comes in two parts. How do you deal with loneliness if you do feel lonely? Yeah, so if you'd like to answer that first, please.
Okay, loneliness is something that at times I intentionally seek out. I think for my self-care, solitude is beneficial at times, most definitely, but loneliness is not a negative in my experience. I think at different points in my journey it did maybe seem that way, but because I'm a lot more in tune with myself at this point, loneliness is nothing to fear. You always have you, and that is paramount to your blossoming. It doesn't matter how other people receive you, it doesn't matter how they hold you within their space, as long as you hold yourself in a balanced and grounded way, then loneliness is nothing to fear.
Fantastic. And what is it to become home in yourself?
Well, going back to environment, I think what I'd like to say is I've been in spaces that are what we could imagine, heaven on earth, beautiful blue waters, golden sand, warm weather, breeze, a cocktail in your hand, and you can be within yourself, not heaven. You can be the complete opposite. You can have turmoil, you can have trauma. So it doesn't really matter about where you are physically. I've come to know that where that grounding and that worthiness, all of that is more important than anything else. So that's what I mean by home within yourself. Nothing can take away and add from the true concept of home within yourself.
And it's just like what Bob Marley said, you can't run away from yourself. So
100%.
Yeah, the work you do on yourself, whatever you do will carry and go with you wherever you are. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, most definitely.
So, do you find yourself adapting to the different countries easily, the countries that you visited?
I would say I have to draw comparisons to other people, because when I speak to people about what I'm doing, what I've done, many people are like, whoa, I couldn't do that. How do you cope? But there is very little difficulty that I have found being in different spaces. And it's definitely liberating, because if you can navigate these spaces with little, challenge when it comes to adapting, whether it's the culture in terms of the food, the language, then if and when you do return to the place you call, quote unquote home, what really can knock you off your square if you can do that? So that's what I'd have to say about that.
Okay, okay. So I know that when I've travelled, and the longest that I've been away actually was 6 weeks. So, you've been away for 18 months now. But when I've been away and stayed in rural areas, I know it's not all hotel and comfort. Sometimes you've got to sort of like rough it out. So, what are some challenging environments you've been in, and what has being in such an environment taught you?
In terms of physical space, I've been very blessed to experience a variety of environments. I've tried to stay away from hotels as much as possible, but I think as a traveller, it's equally important that when you do need a bit of physical environment and comfort that meets a certain maybe standard what you're used to, you need to, go into those spaces, and don't put yourself in difficulty continuously just because of the experience. If in truth you need a bit of that, that's what I would say. So I've had a balance, and when I'm in those rural environments, not having the internet on occasion, that can be difficult. Transport can be difficult. The comfort of being able to, let's say, use an app to call a taxi, all those sorts of things that go out of the window. Sometimes I've had to go into different types of survival mode. But in actual fact, let's say when I was in Ethiopia, for example, washing underneath a mango tree. Some people might be like showering outside, or it just depends on your state of mind and how you think about what an environment, should be to cope.
So has there been anywhere that's been particularly, because showering under a mango tree sounds great. So I'm just wondering, is there anywhere that's been particularly rough? Like if I remember when I went to, Ghana, some rural area in Ghana, and you got the outside toilet, it's just a pit. And then, you've got all these insects that are all around, So I'm just talking about, is there anywhere that you've been and you've thought to yourself, what am I doing?
There has been spaces like that, just as you've described, outside toilets, insects in your environment, on the food. But you have to just say, I'm here for a reason, and just go with it. Whether you have to use a toilet that you've never used before, so be it. What's the worst that can happen? And those types of environments, they've never really felt that alien, even though I'm used to Western comfort. And it's just one of those things. You can navigate it if you really want to. A lot of people would say they don't want to be in those situations, but how do you not know that there is not a lesson for you to learn about how others, be survive in those environments?
Well, what's coming to mind now is, some of the British tourists, when they go away to Spain or wherever and something goes wrong and it's all in the paper and it's just a little small minor thing,
It's so true.
Yeah. But like you say, it's just enriches your life experience and actually teaches more about the self as well, I think, in terms of resiliency.
Definitely. I think actually, if I just touch upon customer service and how we're treated when we spend our money, that is something I think that in the UK, we can make our complaints about various things that happen when we use different services. But the concept of customer service in every space that I've been in is very different. I will just touch upon Ethiopia, because that was the first stop on the trip, and really throw myself in the deep end of that. I'm used to hotels, as I say, working in that industry. And the second hotel that I stayed in, but the first in Sashamani, which was the second sort of stop on that trip, I remember that I'd been out. It was my first day staying there. I'd been out. I came back in the evening. There was no bedding on my bed, and there was no one to be found. You know, it's not as if there was anything there for me to even make my bed. I was told that it's because I didn't leave my key, etc. And I'd not been familiar maybe with that concept.
Right. Yeah. So that was a bit of a shock.
No, and I think it was interesting that it started that way, this trip, because I realised that the concept of what you hold as a standard is sometimes only relevant to your space. So you have to if you're going to do something like this, you have to walk with an open mind, you know, with everything and on every level, because home is home. When you move around, you're not taking those concepts with you. Anything can happen, anything goes.
Mm-hmm. I've never been to Ethiopia, still one place for me to journey to. What's it like over there in terms of Rastafari? Did you meet with the Rasses, with the brothers and sisters?
Yeah, that was one of maybe the inspirations really of visiting that location. Rastafari has definitely been, you know, dominant on my own journey to knowing myself and, you know, fueling certain parts of certain roads I've been down, I would say. So it was important for me to, you know, experience that environment. A lot of people, particularly within that belief system, hold Sashamani as sort of a heaven on earth. So to be in that environment, I've been listening to music all of my life that's made reference to Sashamani. Originally, my mum did consider calling me Sashamani, actually.
Oh, okay. That would have been a nice name as well. Yeah.
Yeah, so being there, it was, I mean, I've had experiences there that, you know, money couldn't buy, in terms of being in certain meetings within that community and volunteering within one of the children's centres, which was set up by some of the original founders of that community there. And, you know, it's a place where if you are interested in any element of Rastafari, you should definitely make the trip. Yeah.
What is the biggest lesson that travelling by yourself has taught you, Buki?
Wow, there is a lot to say there. I would say the biggest lesson is that it's not real. Fear is not real. And, you know, if you live with that concept and go where you are supposed to go, everything will be as it should be.
Okay. Now, it sounds like there's a story behind that statement. So I'm going to ask you, you're speaking about fear. What's the scariest thing that's happened to you whilst travelling? And what important lesson did you learn from it?
Okay, now I can talk about this openly with very little emotion attached to it in terms of fear. But at the time, it was one of, the most life-threatening experiences that I've ever, you know, had so far. And so by land, I was traveling from what was then known as Swaziland, by land, public transport, back to Johannesburg, South Africa. And on that journey, we were actually hijacked at gunpoint, you know, on the road.
At gunpoint?
Yeah. Yes.
So, hold on. My listening skills failed me for a moment there. You were travelling, was it a coach? Was it a minivan? What was it you were travelling in?
They referred to it as a bus, but we would, you know, it's a minibus. So
how many people were on there?
I think it was about a 16-seater, and probably only one of the back seats, or probably one seat at most, was not filled, because that's actually maybe what led it to be so dark and so late at that point in the journey, because it's not like when you're in the UK, the bus has a schedule, it will go. But in that place, you know, the bus needs to be full so that the driver can, you know, make the money. So we were waiting and waiting for more passengers. So it got later and later. Yeah.
And how long is the journey from Swaziland to Johannesburg?
Oh, I'm really not sure. Off the top of my head, I'm going to say it varied, because on the way there, it was one length of time, and it just seemed like it was taking forever on the way back. It's definitely around maybe I'm going to say 6 hours, but probably need to check.
Okay. So then tell me, what happened? How far were you in the journey and the hijack took place? And how did it happen?
Okay, so it is a bit of a blur in terms of even how long that part of the journey was, where we were stopped and, held up, etc. To be honest with you, it's, a bit of fragmented in my mind in terms of the time, but it definitely was in the second half of that journey.
Right.
It's a case where there are, different theories that I could attach to it. I believe it was an inside job also. So, yeah, for various reasons.
So is it that there weren't many, people from the local area travelling, whether some foreigners, if you like?
I think it was just myself and my travelling companion that were, tourists, well, international tourists. I think some people were, they're living in South Africa and then they're going from Swaziland. But our luggage is definitely an indicator, that we are tourists. Our bags, they're huge. So maybe even at the point of getting on the transport, people might have been notified that, we're on this transport, etc. But to kind of sort of narrow it down, it was a case where at one point, the driver said we'd hit an animal, so we had to stop and check the light. And then we stopped again at a petrol station to check the light. And, everything was fine. We carried on. And then further down the road, we're in pitch black. At this point, I'm exhausted, so I'm in and out of sleep. And at one point the driver was apparently, which I learned later in conversation with other passengers, checking the light again. I'm not sure why at this point that it needed to be checked again. But at that moment, two armed men got onto the minivan and the bus. And at first I thought they were just drunk passengers who wanted to get on the bus. But then, especially when you can't understand the language, it is very, it's very, very difficult to, follow their commands, and they were, increasingly frustrated. And one of them took a particular disliking to myself, and there was a lot of focus on me. So, yeah, it was...
he was very angry and volatile towards you when you say took a disliking?
Definitely very physically violent, and he was actually on top of me, searching my body. And it was something that at the time I really thought I wasn't going to get out of, especially when I saw they had ropes as well. I was like, is this going to be a kidnapping situation? Am I ever going to see my family again? And, I'm not going to say that I thought I was going to get out of it, because I didn't. The positivity that I'm usually able to hold within myself wasn't really anywhere to be found in that moment. It was a very bleak situation. Yeah, and they actually left and came back. So waiting and not knowing whether they will come back, and because the other passengers are from that area, so they were saying that they will come back, we should go. And then they all left in the middle of the dark, pitch black on the roadside, entering into Johannesburg. They all started walking. My bag is a bag that I can't even carry. It's got everything I own in it. Should I go? Should I not go? So it was making decisions during a state of, shock.
Nobody came to your aid?
Well, eventually, but again, as I was saying before, what you are used to in the Western environment, in England or wherever it is that you are, it's not the case. I mean, you have to have credit on a phone to make a call to the emergency services. In the UK, you don't need that. So many things are a challenge, in that way. I didn't even trust them when they arrived, because at that point, I already knew in my thinking that the driver was involved. Who can you trust, And there's a lot to it, but, give thanks that I'm here to tell the tale, and I would go back to South Africa with no problem.
I mean, something like that definitely changes a one, doesn't it? So what change did that bring forth in yourself?
The instant change was paranoia. It was, okay, maybe I should stop this. Why am I even doing this trip? I went from a very enthusiastic person on this journey to, okay, maybe this is a sign, because my life's just been put in danger. And as far as I can see, I didn't do anything to create that situation. So maybe I'm supposed to go home, call it a day. So initially, for the first few days, it was difficult. I was unable to sleep. I was on edge for the first day and a half. I didn't leave the room where I was staying. And the thing is, I thought I'd lost myself, because I think the day or so later, I went to a comedy show that was in the building where I was staying when I was back in Johannesburg. And I'm a person who, as you mentioned, I'm a spoken word poet, so I perform. I do have a certain level of confidence. I can be in a space and voice, my thoughts and my feelings. I wasn't even able to sit comfortably in an audience that day. And that's when I was like, I've lost myself, And when you lose yourself, even if it is for a few days, and be confronted with who it is that you actually are. Because if you've lost yourself, you're aware of what you've lost. So for me, I don't even see that as a negative experience, because you travel because you think you'll find yourself, you don't know who you are, you'll connect the dots. But in that moment, I was like, you do know yourself, you just need to own that self and appreciate that self.
And in a way, like the saying is, when you reach rock bottom, the only way is up. So in that description of you losing yourself, it probably was a good space to start to find yourself again. So it's sort of like from that time moving forward, so finding a new dimension of yourself because of that experience, maybe.
Yeah, I'm a person who believes that, spiritually, energetically, in a physical manifestation, we die and we're reborn several times over. A lot of people say it is a concept that's associated with being a Scorpio, whether you follow that or not, whether you're aware of that already. But for me, I can definitely say that happens, and that was a catalyst for that particular sort of falling and rising again within myself.
So for someone planning their first solo long-term travel, what advice would you give?
What advice would I give? Again, go with an open mind, because you can have conversations with people about a space, you can research it, but you don't know what is for you in that environment, what you will encounter, whether it's going to be initially negative and then turn out to be a positive, like the story I've just told, or positive. Go open, take physically what you need with you and not anymore. That's another thing that I would say. 32 kgs of a bag is just not necessary.
It's just a bit too much, isn't it?
It's a hindrance. And also, I was actually talking about it earlier on today with one of my friends, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with Erykah Badu's song Bag Lady.
Oh, yes.
But that concept it's definitely, it manifested in a physical form, also on a spiritual level. I was carrying a lot of things physically and also energetically on my person. And as the journey's gone on, I've sometimes consciously chosen to rid myself of those things, and other times they've just fallen away. And I'm at a point now where the next place I'm going to, which is New Zealand in the next couple of months, I do not want to take, 50% of the things I even have now. I don't want them. I don't need them. I want to be light and free, even, more free than I already find myself now. So, yeah.
Yeah. So it's not to get attached to possessions, just free yourself so you can fly, off the sense of the word. Okay. So my name is Rebecca Gordon. I'm having a fascinating conversation with Buki Hannaway, who is how would you describe yourself, Buki? Are you a world traveller, a world explorer? What's your description of yourself in terms of your travelling?
In terms of my travelling, I'm actually going to go as far as say I'm a world citizen, because I am home wherever I am, as I was explaining before. So I'm journeying, but I'm a world citizen also because of my heritage as well. I have to sort of use that description.
Right, okay. So we're having a great conversation about travel at the moment, Buki's travel experiences. And we're just going to take a short break and return to ask Buki a little bit more about herself and her adventures. Please stay tuned.
We'll be back after these short announcements from our sponsors.
What's your biggest struggle? Successfully navigate your way through the challenge by working with a professional qualified life coach. Get inspired, boost your confidence, and acquire a toolbox of skills that will empower you to maneuver through the process of personal change management. Much easier and quicker than if you work alone. Book your free discovery session at www.satellitelifecoaching.com to start your transformation.
Choose Satellite Life Coaching and get support to create a perfect system to rapidly shift from thinking about your dream to living it. In your sessions, we will explore the exact mindset, behavior, and actions that make up your success blueprint. You will embrace new perspectives, be excited to work the plan, and vibrate with confidence as you manifest your vision. Are you ready to connect with the best version of you? Getting started is easy. Book your free discovery session at www.satellitelifecoaching.com. Let this be the best empowering action you choose today to change your life.
Thank you for joining me in the Coaching Lounge. My name is Rebecca Gordon. I'm your host for the rest of this podcast episode. I'm in discussion with Buki Hannaway, who is a world citizen. Buki, just to ask you about that hijacking incident, did they find the people who did that at all?
Well, the question's irrelevant in terms of the fact that they didn't even, attempt to find them. It's not taken the way it would be, in the UK. There's a lot to the story, but when we finally got to a police station, and also how it worked over there was the police, wouldn't just take you from that scene and safely take you to, where it is you're staying. They drive you to one police station, then you have to wait for officers to come and be available to take you to the other, and it just goes on. So even though the ordeal itself is over, you're not actually back at a point of sort of comfort again. The police received what had happened. The first station we went to, I had a black eye and they wouldn't give me ice. They were laughing. So that's what I mean. This is not home, and things are different wherever. So you have to let go of expectation,
Okay. Why do you think you were targeted?
Earlier I mentioned the luggage that we had. I think, maybe you know yourself, Rebecca, when you travel, if it's not your quote unquote home, you could stand out. If you have luggage or not, the way, you hold yourself, the way you present, the clothes you wear, even, I think for myself, I could have easily blended in terms of, my ethnicity in that space, but possibly that could have even been something that created more of a friction as well, because as I said, one of the perpetrators took a particular aggressive approach to myself and spent more time in the corner where I was, and the things that they were saying when they, said anything in English. I can remember, for example, he was adamant that I had more than what he was able to find. He said, "I know you are a clever one." And, but it was actually true, because I had done things to sort of hide some items, etc. So survival skills,
Did they go through the luggage?
Some of it. At one point, they actually had my passport in a bag. One of the, they were taking some of the items, the bags that some of us had, and were putting them on the roadside, going through it. And at that point, one of the things that I did, and when I tell this story, I always say I'm definitely my mother's daughter. And I could feel my mother's spirit within me when I did this. But I came out of my seat and went over to this person and I demanded my passport back. Maybe that's nonsensical. Yeah.
Okay.
I got it back, so,
Oh, wow, that's brave with a capital B, underlined twice. Okay, brilliant. Good for you, good for you. Okay, so you describe yourself as a world citizen. And on your Instagram post on September the 21st, you put a picture up and it's called Red Cups and Socks. Do you know the one I'm talking about? Red Cups and Socks.
Yes, indeed.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's connected with a gathering that you co-hosted actually. So tell me more about this gathering and your experience of connecting with people from the African diaspora in diverse places that you visited.
Wow. So that particular gathering, I couldn't even, give you the entirety of the list of places where people, come from in my social circle here in Melbourne, Australia. The African diaspora, it's a different sort of majority here. I mean, when I'm in the UK, majority of people are coming from the Caribbean, particularly, Jamaica, Dominica, St. Kitts, Nevis, places like that. And when it comes to the African, the people that are coming over from Africa, a lot of the time their background is Western Africa or, Ghana, even Nigeria. But here in Melbourne, it's a lot of people from East Africa. So you are able to see from the outside, of course, I only experience my own identity and my culture, but from interacting with others, you're able to see the narratives, and the stories that they go through when they're outside of the African continent. And particularly here, there is a lot of, immigration that takes place from different parts of the world where, as I say, we don't see a large number of, the African or Caribbean community in the UK being made up of. So I've been so fortunate to experience sort of that third space from an outside perspective again, where you come from an environment like Africa. Some of these places are, war-torn countries. They come to a space like this, a very, white space. And it's one of the very interesting things that I would say came out of, these interactions that I have and this social circle that I've been very fortunate to be a part of, is I've actually found a lot more ability to recognise what the Black British experience is, and particularly has been for myself, because I think we take for granted the community that we've been able to cultivate and create there in the UK. And when you compare that to what people have been able to build in a space like Australia, in the environment where, I've seen it, they have been here, a lot less time than what we have in the UK. So we've been able to create a voice for ourselves and physical spaces. We have certain areas of particular cities which, they can be categorized as quote unquote a Black area. In these spaces, it's a lot newer, and people are going through that process of creating out parts of their culture. And it's very interesting. And I've been able to, as I say, identify what my Black British experience is and how unique it is to any other Black experience across the diaspora. And I'm very proud of what, the community have been able to create in the UK for themselves.
Certainly when we think back to the first generation who came here, the Windrush era and everything that our parents had to put up with and had to deal with, that paved the way for us. And then we have, I'm second generation, then the next generation, who I wonder sometimes to myself, do they really understand, some of the things that, their grandparents, actually had to go through, So in Australia, where you are now, in terms of levels of discrimination in comparison to the UK, tell me a bit about that.
I think, this discrimination, this anti-Black sentiments, I've seen it everywhere, even in predominantly Black spaces. I've seen people being treated and, certain stereotypes projected onto groups of people because of their Blackness, because of their heritage. I think in this particular space, I'm not a political expert, but what it looks like is there are labels being put on particular groups of young people, gangs, and there's a call out to the African community to sort of deal with that. On the news, I'm not a person who watches the news because, I think it's not very balanced in terms of positive news and negative news. But from, unavoidably, I've become aware that there is these labels being put on the youth here, and it's being asked that the community sort that out. There's no issue with the community sorting out problems that are particular to that community. I think that's necessary, and as a people, we are our first healers, and that should always be the case, in my opinion. But there isn't a call when anything else is, done by other groups of people for that community to fix that problem. And, the problem, quote unquote, of what they call it, the APACs gangs, the African gangs here. I've never seen it. I've lived in different parts of the city. I've never seen, even a physical gathering of a number of youths. I've never even seen it. I think a lot of it is, political strategies, scaremongering, things that have happened in different spaces. They happen here. And I think the community here are, they're finding that voice. I've seen a lot of activism, a lot of unity to combat those things and initiatives. So, I'm not in any doubt that just the same way that the community in the UK have been able to make progress and stamp out their identity and create things for themselves, the people here, you know, they're on the way, or in fact they are doing that at the moment.
Okay. So on Instagram, you recently posted, cultivate a space for the next version of yourself. So what are some Buki self-care treats that you'd like to share with us, and why is self-care so important?
Okay, so self-care is vital. I think at different stages, periodically, you know, maybe I'll be like, Sunday is my self-care day. But then it's become more organic as and when, you know, it's needed. You have to check in with yourself. And the same way that you give your body the nutrients that maybe at times it's lacking, you have to give your spirit and your relationship with self what you might be deficient in at that time. So whether you need alone time, whether you need to take yourself on a self-love date, whether you need to paint your toenails or whatever it is. And I think, again, when I'm sort of shaping what my practices are, I'm not going to be sort of influenced by what it seems, maybe even on Instagram, what people refer to as self-care. I think it's important to know what your own practices are. What I might, you know, list are completely irrelevant for some people, and it's whatever resonates with you, whatever fills you back up when maybe you've poured out something that on reflection you didn't want to pour out and you need it back. So,
Well, what's your favourite? What's your favourite for you?
The first one to come to mind, I will own it. So one of my, it's probably a bit unique to me as well, actually. It's not probably a common one, but I enjoy dancing to music with high energy that relates to my own cultural background. So I would definitely say dancehall is in there, and, you know, dispersing some of the energy that maybe you just need to get rid of in a different manner to probably their typical way, if that makes sense. So
I remember
I'm into self-love dates as well. Sorry.
Okay. So just taking yourself out on treats and things like that. Okay. I'm just going back to one of your I think it was a Facebook post you put on, and I think you were in Thailand at the time, and you were saying you heard the music, and the music took you to a gathering.
I've had, particularly with reggae, I mean, outside of this trip, I'm a traveller. I've done a lot of travelling before this particular trip. It's happened to me in so many different spaces. Reggae music is, you know, it's a world music in the sense of where you will, you know, find it. And the concepts within it are very universal. So at the perfect time, I found that music. I mean, the first day, Rebecca, that I was in Ethiopia, one of my favourite artists was playing in the city where I was. And I actually,
who was that then? Who was that?
It was Protege from Jamaica, Protege, and managed to find the venue, managed to get in without, you know, paying anything.
Wow.
For the love of the music, you know, I left where I was staying on the local transport in the middle of the dark and found this concert and had an amazing time. I didn't know he was there. I was just aware of it when I was actually in Addis. So.
Wow, brilliant. Okay. I hope you're writing a book.
Oh, it's 11:11 now. I just wanted to say that for those. Yeah, I've just looked at the time. It's 11:11.
Okay. Yeah, so because I think your book's going to be a bestseller. You know, with all these experiences and, you know. Because what you're sharing at the moment are just snippets of experiences, aren't they?
100%. And that's the thing with, you know, working on a book. I'm sure anyone who's in that process or approaching that, thinking about it, what do you say when there is so much, you know? And how do you shape that book? You know, it's part of the plan. There will be a book. There's definitely, you know, work in progress.
Okay, let's call it 2 books then.
Maybe more.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, so is there anything that you would tell your younger self now that you've had your experiences up to this time of your life? What would you tell your younger self?
Do it. Just do it. Simple. Yeah. Just do it. Yeah.
As simple as that. That's fine. That's okay. Nothing wrong with the answer. Okay. So what we're going to do, we're actually going to stay in this interview space, but we are going to have another question actually, and then the break. So the next question, the last one for the travel section, is: what values come to mind that reflect you on your travel journey? I've picked out two, one being resilience, the other being connection, another being brave. Tell me some more values that you recognize within and about yourself as a result of your journey as a world citizen.
The first thing that came to mind is authenticity, and in everything that you do, the decision to do this, it's authentic because, I didn't want to do it in some parts because, as you said, letting go of a lot of things that are stable, but you have to be true to yourself and, be authentic, and your life must reflect your true desires. Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, so we'll be back after these short announcements, and thank you for staying with us so far.
We'll be back after these short announcements from our sponsors.
Choose Satellite Life Coaching and get support to create a perfect system to rapidly shift from thinking about your dream to living it. In your sessions, we will explore the exact mindset, behavior, and actions that make up your success blueprint. You will embrace new perspectives, be excited to work the plan, and vibrate with confidence as you manifest your vision. Are you ready to connect with the best version of you? Getting started is easy. Book your free discovery session at www.satellitelifecoaching.com. Let this be the best empowering action you choose today to change your life.
So I know you've taken your initiative over to Jamaica and did a project over there. So tell me about Jamaica and how that part of your journey, delivering that project, how did that fit in and align with your self-development and growth?
So my heritage is, on both sides of my family, predominantly Jamaican, and I'd never been, even though most people that know me didn't even believe that, because I just carry the essence of, the island with me in many ways. So it came to a point where I had to go. I couldn't keep myself away. I had to spend time with people in my family to maybe understand myself even more. And so for personal reasons, I was drawn to take the trip. Doing the work there, I'm not sure, Rebecca, it might have come about in some way or another through, the coaching that I've had with yourself. So, unlocking the potential of what's happening and matching that with the work that maybe I wasn't taking ownership that I needed to do in terms of Daughter of the Sun. Again, fear is often a part of that, which we maybe uncovered in, our sessions. So
yeah, so I recall it was a pilot project that you labelled it as, but actually it turned out to be the real thing, didn't it?
Exactly, and it was also the catalyst of all the other things to come, and I didn't realise the importance that it would have on my personal journey, and also, the direction of Daughter of the Sun.
Yeah. Because the thing about, like we can say, for example, here in the UK, if you're in the UK and you're living locally, you're used to the country, you can set up workshops and things like that. Because the environment, the logistics. But to do something in a different country, it's sort of like way out of the comfort zone, isn't it? So what challenges did you have? Yeah, what challenges did you have at that time? And how was what you did received by the participants?
Okay, so in actual fact, my family are, on one side of the family, they are involved in the education sector and they've got access to, young women, students. So it, as it should be, was. So I was able to get an audience, attendees to be part of that because it was offered as part of their schooling program to the young women, over there at Hawkmoor College. Yeah, so it did align. So I didn't have that particular challenge. One of the challenges, I would say, arose from the differences in terms of what it is to be a young woman in that environment and the type of environment, at the time when I was a young woman. So yes. Differences in the cultural, concepts of, for example, when I was, because a lot of the work, it comes from my personal experiences, which we've touched on. So when you speak about your lifestyle back home, and even making reference to when you were living in your own place. And for the women, the young women in that workshop at that age, to have their own space, it wasn't the norm. So I wouldn't have known those differences without having that workshop. And it's sort of advised me, and going forward, that you can put on workshops different countries, but what it means to be a woman, it is the same internationally in many aspects, but in some there is going to be those those beautiful cultural differences in terms of the environment.
Yeah. Would you say, and I don't know the answer to this because I've not had experience of working with young people in Jamaica, the Caribbean, but would you say that, what age were the young people that you worked with?
So I think you could go anywhere between 15 and 18. That's what I'm going to say.
Okay,
yeah.
So would you say that in comparison to the West, that young girls in that part of the world have to grow up quicker, mature quicker?
In some ways, in terms of some of the challenges that they face, they have to, face realities that maybe young women in the UK in certain environments maybe don't have to encounter. But as I said before, some of them didn't see it as a norm that I was living, away from my family's home at a certain age. So it's relative, I think, to the individuals, even socio-economic background, and it's looking at them as individuals as well, I would say.
Yeah, okay. So so you did that workshop in Portmore, was it, in Jamaica?
Yeah.
And you pulled off an amazing accomplishment because recently you organised a UK charity event from when you were in Australia that actually was due to take place in the UK. So just how did you manage that, Buki?
I would say stepping out in faith and, dismissing and pushing aside fear. Like you said before, when you're not in an environment where your event is due to take place, organising it can present its own challenges. But I definitely move with, especially with the work that I do, if I have a vision, because even that first time, we spoke about what I've done in Jamaica, the first time it worked, it was everything that it should have been. And everything I do going forward, I believe that even if, one person attends or, the projector falls down and we can't watch, what was anything that could go wrong on the day, it is as it is supposed to be. And the coming together of the energies that turn up, the work that we'll do together, it goes where it is supposed to go. So I think it's because I don't really have the fear that maybe, I might have had about approaching things like that, because I believe that it is purposeful and it will manifest in the way it's supposed to ultimately. So
Okay. So what was the event in the UK? It was called Rise to the Occasion. What was it for? What inspired you to set that up?
A few things. So behind the scenes was the need to do more. When I was in Sashamani in Ethiopia, as I said earlier, I volunteered at Uwenta Children's Centre, taught English to the children there, and I wanted to do more. I wanted to give more, and I will go back. I wanted to also celebrate the amazing women, in Birmingham, in my home, that have been there for me when I was there, and also virtually, on WhatsApp, etc., and just encourage me, and being, without sometimes knowing it, inspiration through the work that they do, within their community. I wanted to bring those things together and inspire through their narratives maybe more people to come into their own greatness and rise to their own occasion.
Fantastic. So I know it went well because you gave feedback on that. What would you say that the greatest enlightening moment was, or something that women took away? Because the reason why I'm asking that question is because going away, and coming back to the UK, you would have come back a different person. So whatever you delivered over here, people would have received a different energy about you, like you say, just pushing through the fear, beyond the fear. So how different was that workshop in what evolved from it, what people took away? Does that question make sense? Is it a valid question?
Yeah, I'll try to approach that. For what's coming to mind, I mean, you did say that, a different person, and people, they would inevitably see that in the way, the way that I am. And the actual event, I didn't speak that much. And some people say that's a sign of a good event if the organizer is not speaking as much. I mean, usually I'm facilitating in terms of leading activities, but because I had all these amazing women, really the sister circle was for the attendees, and also the practitioners, the speakers, the performance artists. They were part of the sister circle. They told their own narrative. So just allowing other people to hold their own space and knowing and trusting that in giving them that opportunity to do so, greatness would come. I don't have to, be in every aspect of it. Just trust that it will, based on the concept of bringing that together, it will work.
Absolutely. So. Perfect. Okay. So what was it like coming back to the UK? What was different about coming back to the UK for you?
I just held my breath then when you asked me that question. It was, I didn't just go to the travel agency as easily as I did when I booked the world trip and be like, yeah, I want to return. It was something that was met with a lot of friction, and should I do it, should I not do it? A lot of barriers. My return flight before I left got cancelled twice, and I'm one of those people who sees signs in everything. I connect all these dots that, maybe some people just don't see, but I took that as maybe should I not go, But ultimately, I stuck with it. I went, I arrived safely, and I, returned safely. Everything was fine. But there was a sense of having to face things that I know in many ways I've left behind. But the completion of that, letting go of those, emotional and energetic bags that I mentioned before, the completion of, the fullness of that cycle, I knew I had to face it, on a personal level. And for anyone that stays away from their, normal environment for an extended period of time doing something like this, you will be aware that you change as a person, as we mentioned, but you are confronted with how you have changed when you return to your foundation. And that it's a lot to unpack. It can be overwhelming positively and negatively. It can also be very draining. So it's not, even though in the end it's rejuvenating at the time of being in the same space, but you being a different person of a different energy, you're constantly confronted with the way that you've grown and breaking that down.
Yeah, I think what I'm pleased about is that, and I don't know how this might sound to whoever's listening to it, but what I'm pleased about is that you are only here for a short time. Because whenever I've travelled away and I've come back to the UK, for me, the UK has a certain energy, and the energy is sort of like restricting. And when you've had your experience, you've travelled, you've grown, you've expanded, to come back here and shrink back to fit in with whatever's going on here, it's something that I'm glad that you don't have to do. I went to Thailand recently. And what struck me about being in Thailand was that people just smile, for no particular reason. People are happy, they're sort of like, they're light, like you say, free of possessions and things like that. And then when you come back here and see the gloomy faces, if you smile at somebody, they say, think to themselves, oh, what's she smiling at me for? So I'm really glad that you are still free to expand. And, I don't know how that sounds to whoever's listening to it, but when you travel, and if you've travelled as much as you have travelled, then actually you want to keep, the universe is yours, never mind the world, and you can't come and contain yourself in an environment that might not appreciate everything that you have to give. So what are your thoughts on what I've stated there?
Complete agreement, definitely. I think you mentioned shrinking. I think it's not necessarily the UK. I just want to stress, for me, as I mentioned before, I've got a lot of pride in, the community that I'm a part of through having that space to look at how other people create community. But in terms of your own personal, people, your tribe, your root people that are in your life, having that distance sometimes, it can, you know, when engaging with them again, the same, if, you know, they haven't moved on and they haven't gone through similar processes that you've gone through, you maybe don't react the same way that you once did to, you know, how they move and operate as people. And that is one of those things that without having this time and this distance, I wouldn't have been able to maybe even experience that enlightenment, I suppose, within myself. And then having the, you know, being fortunate enough to go back and, you know, dip my toe in the water there and know my true growth in many ways, and then come back and continue, as you say, it's, you know, I'm very, very grateful for, you know, the experiences that I'm having.
Yeah. And, you know, for the rest of your life, you know, this will certainly make a massive difference in everything that you do going forward. So on one of your Instagram posts, you write, "If you desire the coconut, then it is you who must make the climb. Yes, inspiration, support and encouragement from others can be great, but the catalyst when it comes to positive life-changing work must be you. Your journey can only be actualized by your works. Love and trust yourself with the same vigour that others do you." So that's a deep message. And I've coached people who aspire to set up community ventures, start a business, or pursue their creativity. What advice would you give to the listener who wanted to take ownership of their creative or community work, yet they struggle to navigate this because life gets in the way?
I would say if you have you know, an intrinsic motivation, a desire to go out and, you know, shine your light in a particular way, whether it's community work, creativity, if you, you know, continue to sort of maybe let fear overshadow that and you don't actualize these visions, these ideas that you have, then the way I look at it is I'm actually disrespecting the divine, because those desires, in my opinion, for me, they come from, you know, a higher purpose. And when you look at it that way, I think it's very hard to not, you know, carry out the vision that you have. You have to do it, and there is no other way.
When did you discover the call to express yourself and deliver the message through the vehicle of poetry?
Okay, so I have been, the first time I shared a poem, I think I was 7 years old, and that was in the playground to a teaching assistant. So it's just me.
Right. Yeah. Okay. And you've been writing since then, have you? Or
yeah, I've always done it. I think I've had to do it. It is, for me, it's been a survival strategy to have that space of expression. And I found that, you know, even from that time when I did it at that, you know, particular stage, being a young child, it felt like the first time I was really listened to. I mean, that for me, it's a value. It's important for me to be heard, but also I've come to know that it's not important to be heard by everybody. You know, it's not worthy you to force others to hear you or to receive you in a particular way. The poetry sometimes, what I want to mention is a lot of people who are, you know, familiar with Mary J. Blige's music, they say she makes good music when she's going through difficulty, you know. Yeah. So I think with my expression, the times it's been dormant, I find it's because I'm not connected with me. I'm detached to my true self when I look back over the years, because there's been large periods of time when I haven't wrote, there's been large period of time when I haven't performed, and it's almost like, you know, if you are someone that follows what I do, then the way that we look at Mary J. Blige, and some of us prefer, you know, when she's going through something, she creates more, she gives us more. So I think for Daughter of the Sun, and also me as a, you know, creative spoken word artist, it's the same thing. So
right.
Yeah.
Okay. So in your capacity as a spoken word artist, you've occupied the same space as Akala and Mutabaruka, two staunch powerhouses in the spoken word field. What was that like? How did you occupy the space? Tell us about that.
Imposter syndrome is definitely relevant, especially when it comes to me performing and taking ownership of that journey. So that has to be part of how I explain those experiences, because I'm not just 100% confident, I've got this, I can do this, I'm supposed to be here. I face my own challenges. I question, oh, okay, so I'm here now. I'm opening up for Akala, moved to Baruka. I'm part of the same lineup of these types of people. So imposter syndrome creeps into my mind, and I question, my own craft, especially, at those times of my journey. And it's taken a few years for me to even say, Rebecca, that I am a spoken word artist. And those experiences didn't even seal it for me. No matter, if you are not there on your journey to accept you have a gift, accept that it's something that needs to be shared, it resonates with people, then even things like that. I mean, for people in the, the scene that I'm in, those are amazing experiences, and, I'm grateful for them. But at the time, they didn't even solidify for me that this is what I do, this is who I am.
I mean, I've seen you perform and heard your poetry, and, it's one of those things where you just have to listen, to the words. It was in Birmingham at the Mockingbird Theatre, I believe, quite a few years back now. And you wrote, was it Michael? You wrote a poem for, you know what I'm talking about, don't you? It was a video.
Michael, yeah.
Yes. Tell us what inspired you to write that, and tell us a bit more about it, please.
Okay, so the Michael Brown shooting in the States, and, unfortunately, it's not isolated incident. There are many occasions where people, from the African diaspora in that space are, losing their lives at the hands of law enforcement, rogue people from the community, neighborhood watch style, George Zimmerman. We could go on. Unfortunately, the list is endless. And also incidences where people from our community are stereotyped, and it has a detrimental effect on their life, in terms of, I could list many ridiculous occasions. I'm sure some of us are aware of those, but at that particular time in my journey, I was in my office job, a predominantly white space, and the verdict came out at that point in the day. On my lunch break, I just penned that piece, because, as I said, that's how I survive. If I'm experiencing something, I need to make sense of it, I write. And that was, when those things happen, you feel helpless. The law doesn't even protect us. We're dying when we call the law to protect us, even in some instances. Even, people are having mental health crises in the community, even in the UK, people end up losing their life. It's happened. So that helplessness transfers, of course, into a state of, anger. But with my anger, anyone that knows me, I'm quite peaceful, and I put it into the word, sound, and power. So for that particular piece, that's really the motivation.
Yeah, and that, if people go onto YouTube, what do they type in to hear that?
I believe it's Like Mike, Buki Hannaway. Possibly search for that. It will come up, but yeah.
Yeah, okay, we'll put a link onto the show notes. Okay. And you've recently opened up for the dub artist Mad Professor, what's in Australia, and you did that with 2 hours notice, I understand. That's crazy. How did you feel, and how did you overcome the fear of that?
There definitely was fear. Because, I think even the audience that I expected to be in that space were not, spoken word. They're not that sort of crowd that I'm used to performing in front of here. What were their expectations? Would me, especially because I wasn't even doing anything with any backing music. I didn't even know the piece. I would be reading parts of it. How would even the messages that I have in my work be perceived? So those fears, they creep into your mind. But whether or not you're ready, quote unquote ready, you are ready, because it's your opportunity. You have to take it. And one of my friends back in the UK, he said to me that it's better that you can, have a conversation with your grandchildren in the future and say, I opened up for Mad Professor in Australia, rather than I had the opportunity to do that. So I just did it.
Yeah, that is deep, that is, isn't it? Yeah. Okay, good. Okay. So tell us about the Slamalama event.
The Lama lama ding dong.
Well, yes. I didn't know if I could say all of that in one go, but yes.
Yeah, it's a bit of a mouthful. So the scene in Melbourne is very big in terms of spoken word. I mean, I had no idea about that. It wasn't a motivation to, come here. But again, as we've touched upon, you're positioned in certain situations. You meet people for, particular reasons bigger than what the eye can see. So I'm here in this space. I hadn't done any spoken word for a long time. And one of the important things I find, I was at a spoken word event, open mic. I had no intention of sharing anything. I hadn't done anything for a long time. And someone was on the stage, and believe it or not, the microphone physically swung around into literally in my face, as if to say, take the mic.
Well, you've got one of our ancestors there spearing you on, haven't you?
Exactly. So that's literally, I took the mic and, that same event and, shared something.
You can hold us back in the job market. Send the elders away with this windrush-ish. Moving our lives, moving our cultures, breaking our spirits, disrupting our language, disrupting our lineage. When you're the ones who stole our originals on ships, still trying to control the dynamics of white and black relationships. Victim state only works if we believe in this man-made constructed hierarchy. I've seen Asians blacker than a true born yardie, lips bigger than your auntie. So tell me how the system's going to hold me if I don't subscribe to the labels they use to divide we. I am a spirit before I am skin. 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 All of this searching for belonging distracted me from looking within. I'm realizing that this race thing no longer works as a notion. How can it for me? When I'm clearly able to show you that my DNA is taken from 3 continents. I don't disclose this for any exotic compliments, or because I care about your misconceptions that I have a white mother and a black father, because I am defining who I am, regardless of a perception. Navigating my way to know that I am perfection. In some time, I could have been born a crime, but this is my flipping time. I choose to self-define, because that's what I'd rather. Africa's in my belly, still love Nana spaghetti. The truth of my soul bubbling over like lava. They want to know what the rest is. Clearly Jamaica, since me don't know reggae music are the best. One more, big up my Chinese maternal ancestor. He worked hard so his family wasn't poor. From Canton to Kingston, Mummy's daddy was a yard man. Stowed away on a ship, fell in love with my Italian nan. And that's just one side of nature's plan. That explains how my life began. I am a spirit before I am skin. 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 Traveled over lands and ocean. Seen my face so many times in the globe. Lost myself so many times in the world. It was only me that brought me back. I rescued myself. Not because I am other to some, not because I am black, not because I am white to some, but because I remember I am energy rather than just person. Infinite being, yes, that's me. A soul worthy, a vibe capable of shining like the sun rightfully. Energy same as earth, energy same as dirt, energy same as universe. And if they are here, and I am here, in this equation no form is superior. then how are we separate? I am a spirit before I am skin. 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 No longer seeking validation. I've read and I've heard about slavery, colonialism, imperialism. I've lived and I've seen modern racism's devastation. Still stick my fingers up to all of them isms. These 2018 eyes see through ancient lies. I'm just thinking, if we categorize everyone, what if we dismiss genuine allies? Yes, there is a collected force labeled the white man. Yes, there is mental sickness of white supremacy. And I still feel it when they take one that looks just like me. And I still feel it when they take one that looks just like me. Get out of the sunken place. They want to divide you, so it's harder for you to survive their rat race. His story and her stories being unjust. But when we die, all bodies return to the earth's dust. It's the spirit that outlives us. I am a spirit before I am skin. 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 I am a spirit before I am skin.
So what inspired you to write that piece?
It was actually the Windrush scandal and, the news clippings and things that I had engaged with on social media, being in Australia and hearing about these continuous stories of what was happening over in the UK to the Caribbean community there. So at the beginning of the piece, if you listen, taking the words there, it's mentioning the fact that with what was happening at the time and is still happening, the Windrush situation, to me it's more deeply connected to other things before that. And I'm in a position now where I focus on what I can create in terms of positivity from particular types of oppression within the community, if that explains that. And to be able to talk about that in terms of the poetry, I've performed that piece several times here in Australia to predominantly white spaces, but I had an amazing opportunity to speak at a launch of a community initiative here and share a few pieces. One of them was that piece, and at the end of that I had people from the African and Caribbean diaspora from places I've got no knowledge of, some of the islands around here where you find melanated people. Papua New Guinea, for example, they had no idea what Windrush was, what the challenges are now, and you don't know what you're here to do and what messages you're here to, give to other people and share.
So part of your journey has been about sharing, expanding the knowledge and the awareness of us, about us all around parts of the places you've travelled to.
Yeah, most definitely.
Yeah, okay, that's good. So what we are going to do now is go through the quick fire round. Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. What's on your playlist right now?
Okay, so apart from the new mix that my friend dropped, which is the reggae one, reggae is always, my music of choice. Also listening to, particularly to ground myself before I stepped into the lounge with yourself today, a lot of Flow Assist.
Oh, yes.
Listen to a lot of Flow Assist. That's initially what's come to my mind, yeah.
Okay. What book are you currently reading or have recently read?
Last book I finished would have been, I dip in and out, so the last book that I actually finished would have been Akala, The Natives.
Oh, yes.
And currently reading is You Are a Badass at Making Money, Jen Sincero, I believe.
Okay. If I can go back to Flow Assist, that is one part of the duo of Flowetry, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So, what's one of the tracks that really gets you tingled and inspired and fired up?
Definitely Breathe is a track that's part of my spiritual practice. I've actually had a conversation. I've been fortunate to meet both of them and have conversations with them. So Flow Assist, I've told her, which was amazing, on my birthday actually a few years ago, how much that track really helps to ground me and remind me of certain knowledge that I already hold and just allow me to center myself. And it is, to me, it's not just simply a song. It is a part of my spiritual practice. It's actually in a way a meditation as well. Yeah.
Right. Okay. And Akala's book, The Natives. What's one thing that what word sums up that book for you in terms of what you've taken away from it?
Oh, I would say, I'm going to say validity. And the reason why I'm using that word is because some of the things that we, believe are concrete in terms of the social concept of race, particularly the book touches on race and class. And for where I am here, the interesting thing about this environment is people who in the UK, we would never, ever refer to them as Black in any sense of the word because of how they physically present here in this space, because of, the history and the various acts of genocide that have occurred on this land. There are people who, their lineage means that they are Black, but they have a stolen generation, all sorts of things that if you are interested, you need to go away and do some research. So the concept of race and what it means when we look at Blackness and whiteness, that book was the perfect book for me to read in this space when that idea began to, not have the same relevance, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And you are a badass at making money. What inspired you to read that book?
I spoke earlier about the conversation that I had with Russell Simmons.
I thought he might come up at this time. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Because for me, I was, challenged by this notion of making money full stop. I didn't see it as spiritual. I had negative ideas of money and what money, brings into people's lives, the quest for money. So the book really is about breaking down your ideas and attachment to the concept of money. And it goes, there's activities where you look at, it's as if, when we look at what love means to us, how deeply we can do work on that, where those ideas come from, etc. The book does that with the concept of earning, making, and, creating more financial abundance in your life and the spiritual attachments to it, because many of us who are on a particular journey may not see it as a positive, but it is about the energy. Money is a piece of paper or, a coin, and what one person does with it is not the same as what another does with it. So the book helped me to dispel some negative attitudes that I had surrounding money.
Okay, we should certainly put the title of that book on the show notes. And money is currency, as you say. It's energy, isn't it? Currency, it's a current. Okay.
Yeah.
So what was the last deep conversation you had, and who was it with?
Okay. Often I have deep conversations with this particular friend of mine who's also been on your podcast, actually, Rebecca.
Oh, yes, Lidgy, Mr. Reed.
Yes, Mr. Reed, yes.
And that's another amazing podcast. It's had a lot of hits. So if you haven't heard it up to now, listener, please do tune in. Yeah. Okay. So he's a great person, isn't he? Again, very deep, very profound, and very knowledgeable. Yeah. Okay. So you don't have to share with us the details of the conversation. What was the topic?
Okay, so in summary, we have our root people, our go-tos when we, hopefully we know our people well enough so we know what type of energy we will be able to get from one person. So I needed to actually shake off some circumstances that have been affecting me, today as I woke up. So knowing my friendship with that person, I gave them a quick call just to help me sort of talk through some of the thinking. And, I'd already done meditation before the conversation, so I'd shifted a lot of the stuff. So, it's not always, roses behind the scenes when you're traveling the world. There's things that are happening on the other side of the world that can, if you allow it, affect your reality.
You've got a very good support system, haven't you?
I'm so blessed. So if any of those people are listening, particularly my sister circle, my queens, you all know who you are. And, I give thanks for all of you. Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay. So the next question, if you could time warp yourself to any point in history, when would it be and who would you hang out with?
Oh, you know what, Rebecca? Recently I did a past life session. So I've done it.
Yeah. Okay. And what came out of that?
Okay, let me simplify it. So connecting it back to the piece that, we heard.
Yes.
The person who facilitated this past life experience for me did, they said that you may not be the gender that you are now, you may not be the race that you are now. And for me, on both levels, that was true.
Yeah, when I did mine, it was the same, actually. Yeah.
And you almost don't, I don't know for you, I had to answer the questions and say out loud what I could see. For me, it was more feeling. I'm more of a feeling person than a visual person. So I did not even want to say I am a man out of my mouth. It was very difficult.
Okay. So, yeah. I mean, when I had mine, it actually made sense in certain things that I recognise about myself. Was it the same for you?
100%. I think he did say initially when we had a workshop sort of activity before, when he was, probably advertising his services. I was at the Mind, Body and Spirit Festival here, and someone asked him about which life you would, go to, and he said it would be the relevant one that you need to, come into contact with now, with where you're at in your journey. And definitely what was revealed was relevant and is relevant to where I'm at.
Okay, cool. Okay, so we've almost finished. We've only got a few more here. So who or what is your biggest inspiration?
It can never be, one individual. I would say this may sound conceited, but I'm going to be unapologetic. My biggest inspiration is the journey that I am on, because I have the belief that if I am my best, then ultimately I will be my best for others. So I have to fill my cup. We're probably, most of us are aware of that concept, and that is definitely, how I'm choosing to live.
No, that's good, because being inspired is about trusting whoever or whatever it is, and you're trusting the journey because it's giving you so much, and you're getting so much from it. So I do get that. Okay, next one, dawn or dusk?
Dawn.
Because?
Because, again, the daughter of the sun, I appreciate both, the rising and the falling, because one is not relevant without the other, I believe. So we always have a new opportunity, a new injection of life. And when we rise again, ultimately there is going to be, the fall again, but that fall will push the next rising.
Superb. Okay, so now's the time for you, and actually thank you very much. You didn't know these questions were coming in the quick fire round, so you've done very well. So please share your contact details. How can someone be in touch with you?
Okay, so in terms of social media, Instagram, which we will, you said you will put them in the details, so that's daughter OTS, DAWTAOTS on Instagram. You can also find my, personal account. That's fine as well. I'm currently on a social media break, but I am there. And that's Buki Words. And by email if you want to communicate in terms of anything related to Daughter of the Sun. You can also reach me via email, but we can put all of that out there. There's so much for me to remember.
Okay. And we'll also let people know, because, somebody might want to hear more of your music, if you're performing wherever you are in the world. So, hopefully people will get in contact for those reasons. So we'll put all that information down at the end. I'm just going to finish off with a quote that we started off with. 20 years from now, you'll be more disappointed by the things that you didn't do than the ones you did do. So throw off the bowlines, sail away from the safe harbour, catch the trade winds in your sails, explore, dream, discover. What's your message to someone who keeps putting off something they'd love to make happen, Buki?
I would say that you can do that. The universe will, find a way for, even if you're going in a direction that is not beneficial for you to actualize what it is you're putting off. The door will be slammed in your face, a decision will be made for you, and you will inevitably go and do what it is you're supposed to do. So use your energy in the direction that you're supposed to go, because it will happen that way anyway.
Okay, good. And just want to finish off, you said fear is not real. So if someone's fearful about taking the next steps, what can you say to them to reaffirm to them fear isn't real?
I think that person, facing fear, look at where that is actually, coming from. What is the evidence? Is it other people's opinions? Is it their fear being projected onto you? You really have to look within yourself, specifically where is the root of that fear and what is real, if anything, about that fear.
Okay, great. So, Buki, the word I'm going to use to sum you up, I know you said you're a world citizen, but I'm going to add on a wise world citizen, because there's so much that you've given in this interview. It's certainly enriched with a lot of, information, advice, support strategies that anyone who's listening can take something away from this. So it's been a long interview and you've stayed with it. You've stayed with me. So thank you so much for your time. It's been a blessing.
Well, thank you. It's all about reciprocity. So I have to, have my gratitude towards you creating this space. So give thanks.
You're very welcome. We'll have to do it again, maybe once your EP's out and further down the road of your travels. Let's reconnect for another podcast interview. So thank you so much.
Thank you for tuning into the Coaching Lounge. Join us next time for more insightful interviews with inspiring guests. You can hear previous shows on SoundCloud by searching for Satellite Life Coaching. We're always interested to hear your feedback and topic suggestions, so don't hesitate to email us on info@satellitelifecoaching.com.